Hello there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Formula Yap. Just two dudes yapping about Formula One. I'm Elbert,
And I'm Kevin.
and let's just get right into it. Um, so last week was the race in Imola, as we well remembered. We didn't race there last year because of the tragic flooding that happened there. So very grateful that the weather, obviously grateful that everyone in the region was okay. And they got back together, and we're back racing at a beautiful historic track. So let's just quickly recap what happened in Imola. Just the race recap: Max Verstappen back to his normal self, winning the race. Lando Norris in P2 and Charles Leclerc in P3, to the delight of the Italian Tifosi. But it wasn't the runaway win that we thought Red Bull would have as we expected. So let's touch on that actually. Is Red Bull vulnerable? Um, was Red Bull vulnerable at Imola? It did seem like that, or in the practice sessions, Red Bull were very much off the pace on Friday practice last week.
Yeah, it wasn't a traditional Red Bull race as we've seen it over the past few years, where they just dominate and blow everyone out the water. Max Verstappen obviously still came first, so he still got the victory. But the gap between Verstappen and Norris was less than a second. So that's a pretty tight margin, uh, especially considering that Norris is in a McLaren and not in an equal Red Bull car. So we really have seen Red Bull have a bit of a decline in terms of their dominance, right? They're still contenders. They're still dominating on paper, but if you look at the race, it's just not the same as we've seen. Sergio Perez, Checo in eighth place. Uh, no, it wasn't even a contender. He was out in Q2, right? He didn't even make it to Q1, which is says something about the lack of dominance. Not too crazy because last year around the same time, he also saw a decline in the races. You know, he spent from now up until the summer just really struggling. So it's also not too uncommon, but it's not the same dominance as we've seen.
Yeah, definitely not. At least not what we've been used to since second half of 2022. Like if you look, the free practice sessions, last week they weren't that far off the pace. Well, just like a quarter sec, 2/10, 3/10 of a second off. So obviously those margins don't, that's an FP1, FP2. Last week they were about half a second, 6/10 off. FE3, you know, a whole second off. So it doesn't look that bad, obviously, but just given the context of everything, it all last just the dominance they've been through, it very much seemed like something was off. In the practice sessions last week for them, and it looks like in the sessions that mattered, right? FP2 Friday, which when the conditions most closely resemble the race. Max half a second off of uh, Charles last week in FP2, and then FP3 8/10 off of Oscar Piastri in the McLaren in FP3 on Saturday. So, and then that's Max, by the way. Max is obviously just cooking out there, you know, the past in this current generation. And then Checo is obviously just a little bit behind, 10th or 2 off. But it does show you that there seems to be the Red Bull car uh, this year seems to be seems to start to show its weaknesses. We're starting to see it more, especially when you've got the likes of McLaren and Ferrari, bringing upgrades and trying to catch up. McLaren last week, had their full upgrades that they brought in Miami, right? So they've got the full upgrade package for both the cars, and looks like it paid off for them quite well, at least from what it looked like. So it does seem like Red Bull still tops. No one's disputing that they are still top of the F1 world, but McLaren have seemed to have solidified themselves as the de facto number two.
Right. It's not the same as it was before where we saw Max crossing the line with a 20-second gap. It's now that Max is actually having to stay focused on that last lap because if not, he might lose it. And it's something we haven't seen in a really long time. Even when, and I say this as a Checo fan, even when it was the two Red Bulls competing against each other, quote unquote competing, right? Because it would be a Red Bull 1-2, but Verstappen was crossing that line with a 10-second gap, a 15-second gap, a 5-second gap, a 20-second gap. So even when they were doing 1-2s, it was just a crazy dominance and a big part of Verstappen dominance. And now I don't think it's that Verstappen has declined. Clearly not, because he's able to stay contentious, get those pole positions, finish the race. They have good strategy. Even then, he's still able to finish first. I think it's the fact that finally these teams are figuring it out. And I'm glad to see that. It makes for great racing. But as a Red Bull fan currently, I am a little worried. I'm a little worried not for this year, but for next year you when Adrian Newey isn't there, when we have a massive driver change up in the roster amongst these different teams. So I'm not worried for this year, but I'm worried for 2025. I'm worried for 2026.
You're already looking ahead as a Red Bull fan. That's
You've got to. You've got to.
the Checo. That's the Checo bias for you. But we'll touch on Check. We don't even know if Check is going to be at Red Bull in 2025 and beyond. But we'll see. We'll get to that.
We can
Um,
talk about
we'll
that
go,
after.
we'll get to that. Actually, we'll get into that in just a little bit. But no, you bring it up right. It's not that Red Bull have slacked off. Not Red Bull are dog now. Like I said, these other teams have caught up in car development. They're understanding the concepts of the car, and they're realizing what Red Bull have done you know in their car. With the unique front suspension, the very complex floor, that style, all this like aerodynamic stuff that Red Bull have honed since the start of this generation. They're realizing this is the way to go, and they're starting to not copy them, obviously, you know what I mean, but
Right.
they are taking inspiration and applying their own flavors, shall we say,
Exactly.
to it. And they're developing. I mean, we see McLaren very much moving towards that Red Bull language design in terms of side pods full lore, and it's working. Like we saw at the rate, we saw him last week at Imola, Lando finishing a second away from Max Verstappen. He was he was closing in. Lando was closing in those gaps, in those laps, closing, closing, closing. And he said himself in the post race interview, 1 to 2 more laps, and he might have had him, or been in that fight with the DRS
He's
a
figuring
little
it
bit.
out.
Yeah, he very much is. That's that, and props Oscar Piastri. Obviously, we run down the recap here. Max win, Lando second, Charles third, Oscar in fourth place. McLaren are showing up strong. Carlson fifth, Mercedes in no man's land, sixth and seventh. Um, Checo well behind in eighth. 55 seconds off of Max last week for the win, and that's actually what we're going to get into. This is the Imola is the start of obviously the main European swing of the season, where most of the races are in Europe. Obviously, we've got Imola last week. Obviously, this week we're in Monaco.
Monaco.
Right, we will touch on Monaco in a bit. But this seemed to be an off week for Checo, but is it an off week? It's just another off week, or could it just be an off week given the strong start to the seasons this season he's had, or is it just like similar to what we saw last season, where the second we got to Europe, he just fell off he just fell off a cliff. Are we starting to see him fall off again? Like, what is going on? What is going on with Checo?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what is going on because, like you said, the same thing happened last year, or to be honest, the last 2 years. Let's go back where to 2022. He had an amazing start to the season. He won Monaco, one of the triple crown races, right? He won the Monaco Grand Prix. I That's when he signed the 2 year contract with Jen, extended it to 2024 to this year. And people then started to gain the haters started to gain some respect for Checo. And the week after that, he saw a small drop off, and the 4 or 5 races after the Grand Prix after that, he saw even more drop off, and it just was not a good middle of the season, right? Same thing with last year. Not as strong of a start, but still he was winning races. He was potentially he was competing for first place in the world championship at one point at the beginning of the season. He was close to even leading it at one point. Max Verstappen got the fastest lap, which then took that away from him. And then same thing after Monaco, or around Monaco, he started to have another drop off. He started to not finish a few races. He started to battle getting out in Q2. In Q2, he started to, just he wasn't being competitive, and I think we're seeing that creep up again. And I don't know what it is. I'm hoping that the the feeling that he knows the Monaco track really, really well will delay that drop off. I don't think we're going to see as steep of a drop off as we've seen over the last 2 years, but do expect a little something. There is some pressure on him, right? He does have this feeling to perform. These upcoming tracks are really tough tracks that I don't think suit his defensive style. I think that's one of those things too. These upcoming tracks aren't really tracks you defend on. They're tracks you have to kind of consistently attack in. These are very much attacking style tracks, and for him as a defensive driver, it doesn't always suit him. I think that's another thing too that we should consider. So I think he's matured a little bit over the past 2 years. He's done the inner work to understand where he falls short. I think Monaco will be the litmus test to see what we can expect over the next 5 races. Again, of course, I would love to see him win again. I would love to. Will he? I'm not exactly too sure about that. My money is on Leclerc Orlando. I'm not gonna be basic and say Verstappen. So my money's on Leclerc Orlando. And I think if we take a look at his performance over this weekend, we'll be able to realize how much juice he's got left in the tank, especially since he has contract negotiations looming over his head.
Definitely. It does seem the contract negotiations are just that pressure of those contract negotiations looming over is forcing him to continue perform and be at his best. Um, it seemed like after he signed his contract extension, was it? 2022 or 23 where he won Monaco. I
22.
forget.
2022.
There was I forget when. He signed a contract extension right after Monaco. I forget if it was last
Right.
year or the year before. But
2022.
after that, he just started slumping, and throughout the rest of that European slump, that European swing, and it didn't really come back. His performance didn't really come back through to baseline until later in the season. So I feel like dare I say, Red Bull is pulling his strings a little bit here to keep him on his feet, just to try to keep him, performing, because they can, how the driver market is, they can very much, uh, find someone to replace him from someone obviously within their own driver pool or from outside in the free agent market.
Right, exactly. So we'll see what happens. We'll go in a little more later on exactly where he is with those contract negotiations. Um, but Aston Martin, are they falling flat on their car development again? 2, 3 years in a row? Or is this just a small little stump? What do
Yeah.
you think?
Um. I honestly don't know. I just had a brain fart for a second. I zoned out. What the hell are you saying? I had an answer, but I just zoned.
Tell me about what's going on with Aston Martin.
Oh, just like their engineers back at Silverstone and on the track, clueless, just like how I blanked out. It seems that the upgrade package that they brought to Imola, uh, not. I don't know. It doesn't seem to. I don't know if it's working for them or not. It seemed what Fernando Alonso ran. Uh, we saw in the race after his crash in FP3, his piss poor qualifying performance, getting knocked out in Q1, and then just running. It seemed they were Aston Martin were running Fernando's race like a test session, putting him on every you know tire compound to check the data, and they're nuts. And from reports I'm hearing, it's like they're not getting good correlation between what they're getting in the simulator, and the CFD stuff, at base versus what they're seeing out on the track. And as an engineer, you always want to see good correlation between simulations and like, your simulations and calculations and like real world performance. And if you don't see that, that's bad, very bad. And so who knows what's going on with them? I mean, we saw this last year, right, where Aston Martin got off to a very strong start out of nowhere from preseason, like, even in preseason testing last year. People were like, "Well, Aston Martin, quick." Right, and then we saw him. Fernando Alonso picked up 6 out of 6 podiums in the first 8 races, right? Uh, for just and then they just fell off a cliff after that. The upgrades just were not clicking for them, and it seems like that's what we're getting here again. Obviously, they didn't have that strong start. They picked up right there where they left off last season. Um, but like I said, we're getting to that point again where they're pushing out upgrades, and it's not clicking for them. The correlation from sim to track is not good. It's not, the correlation isn't correlating. So something is up. Don't know what it is. Poor Fernando had to run this thing like a damn pre-test, had a preseason test, had his worst, his worst career finish in Formula One. Lance Stroll, I guess props to him for bringing it ninth. You know,
That is a pretty good performance for Lance Stroll.
yeah, all things considered, yeah, that is pretty good for Lance. Um, I mean, to be fair, the Aston Martin should be in the top 5, should be scoring points. It's not a lot of points. Let's be absolutely real with ourselves here. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel, 2 4 points or whatever, but they are getting points, which is very important. But if they keep like this though, where these upgrades don't correlate, right? If you're bringing upgrades, yeah, they say are amazing, that the sim says it's going to give them X amount of performance, X seconds per lap, X seconds per lap, in per on this track, but then they get to that track and they're not seeing that performance. There's gonna be some discussion of there's got to be something going on Aston Martin. Like, this is not right. They're gonna have to pivot. So who knows what's gonna happen? But if they keep up like that, they're gonna be in real trouble from teams behind, especially RB, who are ever pulling closer to that top five, Formula A, as I like to call them. Um, obviously we saw the performance in Miami. Daniel Ricciardo, massive finish in the sprint. And then Yuki Tsunoda, beautiful finish in the main Grand Prix, 7th. So they brought home a very sizable haul of points in Miami. And then in Imola again, with Fernando Alonso out the running, it was up to Lance Stroll to get the points, which he did in 9th. And who's right behind Lance Stroll last week? Who finished the race behind Lance Stroll last week? It's Yuki Tsunoda, 10th place, a single point. So RB seemed to be edging ever closer and closer to fighting for a spot in that top five. It seems like they're consistent. Red Bull, or it's not Red Bull, RB are fighting to in that scrape for the last point in a Grand Prix race.
Yeah, they're struggling for points, but they're getting them.
They are. You can't really complain. I mean, you can't really complain about that. Obviously, the gap seems massive. Obviously, Aston Martin are 5th in the constructors currently, 44 points. RB are at 24 points, which seems like a lot between Formula A and Formula B, but given the stuff that we've seen, given the performance we saw last week from Aston Martin, and from what we're seeing, it feels like it's a repeat of last year, where teams could start closing in on them and overtaking them. Like I said, we saw that last year. Aston Martin started off second best. They fell down that order to where they should be expected. Fourth, fifth fastest. And it seems that that's where they're at right now. They've maintained that 5th spot in the constructor standings. But I'm sorry, I keep saying Red Bull because I said RB. But I'm not going to call them by their other name.
That's funny.
I'm not going to call them by their name. I'm going off topic, but funny enough, James Vowles was at a press conference at Monaco today, and he named them he was in an interview with Sky Sports, and he said the funniest thing ever. Let me see if I can find that quote real quick. I have to find this real quick. Yeah, here we go. He called RB in an interview, right? On the main broadcast, Sky Sports broadcast. Alpha Tauri Visa Cash App, buy one get one free.
That's hilarious.
I wish I had a clip of that. I would play it, but I'm trying to get copyright striked or DMCA to hell
Right.
by Formula One Media and Sky. So we're not gonna do that. So yeah, that's just funny, but yeah, it like I said, it does. RB are edging ever closer and closer to that top 5 in the constructors, scraping for points. And if this path of, because the Red Bull upgrade, keep saying Red Bull, the RB upgrades seem to work. Aston Martin upgrades aren't. Could we possibly see a switch up during the season where Aston Martin just can't hang on to and scrape for those final points in the in the race? So I guess they aren't, because Fernando's going to be scoring points. We know how great of a driver that rookie is. And Lance is Lance. Could we see RB, if they continue making progress on the car over the course of the season, possibly getting fifth in the constructors, out, you know, dropping Aston Martin down to Formula B, bottom five.
Yeah, I can definitely see that happening. I don't think Aston Martin has been the same as it was last year. Last year, everyone was really surprised by how fast it was, and sure, it was really copying or copying, drawing inspiration from whatever you want to call it from the Red Bull. It was pretty competitive, and we saw Fernando Alonso being up there. He got a few podiums. We saw Lance Stroll having a pretty decent season last year. This year, there's just too many good teams that figured it out this year. So we have from the original three, which is Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes. We have McLaren that's jumping in that mix, pushing Mercedes down to fourth, right? So Mercedes by big three standards is not competitive, but by overarching Formula One standards, still very competitive, right?
Yeah,
Obviously, Aston Martin last year was competing with the Mercedes. We saw Alonso and Hamilton fights, Alonso Russell fights. We saw Lance Stroll and fighting with some of these guys, right? And now they're fighting for any point they can get. We have Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, 6 and 7 at Imola, and we have Lance Stroll at 9, right? And obviously, Alonso just wasn't able to have a great performance, but on a week that he has a good car, he's not doing too much with it, and it's not his fault. We're all aware of his capability as a driver. It's just Aston Martin, they were able to get fast. They weren't able to stay fast. I think that because they are borrowing this design, they don't know how to improve on it based on their drivers. And do I think they beat Red Bull? That was the original question you asked. Do I think that we beat Red Bull? No, I don't think so. Yes, Lance Stroll finished ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, but Yuki Tsunoda has much more longevity than Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll, the ups and downs between Lance Stroll are very wide, unfortunately. Yuki Tsunoda is a lot more consistent. Fernando Alonso can be Aston Martin's redeeming character trait, but does he even want to be? I mean, we've seen over this past season how he's talking about how he thinks he's ready to retire for real now. So does he even want to be? Uh, Going putting his body through this. He has the capability. Yes, I bet you will see him in one more podium this year, but he doesn't have the same drive, no pun intended, that these other drivers have.
well, I'm sorry, we're talking about the same person. We're talking about Lance Stroll. You said getting on the podium. If he gets a podium, I will then 100
I think
bucks.
Alonso gets a podium this year. I don't think Lance Stroll gets a podium, but I bet you Alonso gets a podium this
Oh, you
year.
said Alonso. Okay, if
Yes,
Alonso,
yes, yes,
okay,
yes.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not taking that bet with you then because I'm not losing every 100 bucks to you. Up. I thought you said Lance Stroll. I was like, okay, I'll take that bet if you're that delusional. But
I
yeah,
can see Lance Stroll fighting for a podium for sure. You know what? I'll call it right now. Lance Stroll's best performance this year. He's gonna be in a fifth place. I bet you we'll see it. We'll see Lance Stroll in fifth place this year.
you okay if he does that? And now we talking about now. I'm gonna settle this. I will take that wager with you. I'll vend me you 100 bucks if that's the case. Is that in a main race or
Main race. None of
main
that
race? So
sprint crap.
none of that
None of
sprint
that
crap.
sprint
Not
race crap.
qualifying. He has
Mm-mm.
to.
I mean,
He needs points. You're talking about
because
he needs points.
you know what? Let's talk about it. Practice sessions, yes, they're important, but come on, Latifi was at the top of a practice session at one point. And are you gonna tell me Latifi was a great driver? No, right? I digress. I am sorry, but I just had to put that out there.
Go,
Anywho,
my go,
moving on.
go Tiffy. Don't disrespect Go Tiffy like that.
I will not
Speaking
disrespect.
of speaking of the goat, uh, we're moving on to the goat of Formula One tracks. I think the jewel of the F1 calendar, Monaco, the Circuit de Monte Carlo.
I
It's going to be
love
a beautiful
Monaco.
race this week. We are. I should preface this. We are recording this, even though FP1 and FP2 have already taken apart. Have already gone by. Sorry in advance. So if you're just like, why the hell are you bringing this up now? Monaco's already started. Shut up. Deal with it. Monaco's a go-to track. It's been on the calendar in pretty much every F1 season apart from COVID seasons. But it's a go-to of a track, and one of the goats of the sport, greatest of all times, Ayrton Senna,
Ayrton Senna. Hmm.
who was the most decorated winner at Monaco. I believe he's won the Grand Prix, the Monaco Grand Prix 6 times. McLaren are paying tribute to him this week with a beautiful green and is it green and yellow livery to
Yes.
uh, on the car to represent and honor the Brazilian who tragically lost his life 30 years ago last week, actually at Imola. May
Right.
he rest in peace. Along with this, we shouldn't forget that last week was a remembrance not just to Ayrton Senna, but to Roland Ratzenberger, who was another driver that died uh, before. He actually died in a practice session, or no, it was in qualifying. He died in qualifying before uh, Ayrton Senna died on race day. So it was a very tragic weekend in Formula One. Us two shows you what kind of a sport dangerous is. I just had a stroke. Oh my god, how dangerous of a sport Formula One is.
Very dangerous. Yeah, these drivers are putting their life on the line essentially every time they step out there.
Exactly, and it does feel like McLaren. I shouldn't say it does feel like McLaren. McLaren have put out all the stops with that custom livery
It's
on
a
the car.
beautiful livery.
I'm just gonna get your thoughts on. Yeah, it is a very beautiful uh, livery.
A stunning
Beautiful
display of
homage,
color.
beautiful homage to him. I think with the green and the yellow, the Senna logo. I believe there's a Senna logo somewhere on the car. I forget where, but it just looks stunning. And obviously, their race, the drivers are rocking the uh, the, the helmets, donning the similar color scheme, and their race suits as well, donning a very similar color, the same livery. So it is a very touching tribute to Senna. I will, I do love it. I know some people on social media have been dogging on delivery. Not that it looks bad, not that it looks bad, because it doesn't. They just so the main criticism that I've seen on social media is that they're saying people are. It seems like McLaren are milking the Senna tribute because something about these drivers don't really, most of the people that work uh, at this McLaren probably weren't working at McLaren when Ayrton Senna was, driving for them, winning races and stuff. So it's like a whole different. It's like a whole different. It's like a whole different vibe, right? It's like what's the, it's like why are you doing this? And people seem to forget that. People don't seem to realize is like obviously yes, it's different times. Not maybe the guard has changed. No one that worked at McLaren during those days are working at McLaren now, most likely, right? But it's the heritage of the brand. McLaren came. McLaren was defined in the mid late 80s, early 90s in Formula One. They made their mark with Ayrton Senna, right? Just like how they made their mark with Lewis, just like how McLaren made their mark in the 21st century first with Lewis Hamilton, right? In 2008, and with Mika Hakkinen at the turn of the millennium, 1999, 2000, 2001, with their world championships. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't. At least for me, that's the criticism I saw. It just doesn't make sense. That's like It's like, well, the cars change. It seems like they're milking this for marketing or whatever. Like, it doesn't make sense. So I mean, it does, right? Just if this does make sense, I don't see why people are complaining about it. Like they're trying to find a problem that isn't there, an issue that isn't there. It's nothing more than a
Yeah,
pitiful tribute to one of the sport's most skilled drivers who was taken from this world far too early.
yeah, exactly. Like, is this a marketing tactic? Duh, obviously. But I mean, he was a legend of the sport, and it's not like they're doing it in a tasteless way. They're honoring the legacy. I mean, this man changed the sport. He showed people what it means to be someone who lives for their car. Like this guy, like he was a rock star in a car. That's what Ayrton Senna was. He was a
Yep.
guy who perfected his craft and just lived to be in his car. And he's someone that many, if not all drivers on the grid looked for inspiration. He gave us that amazing quote: if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver." He gave us that beautiful quote, and he's one of the people, like you said, has won the Monaco Grand Prix most times. And I mean, if we can say he perfected it, I think he did. And on top of that, going back to McLaren's ties to Senna, for any car enthusiasts out there, you know what I'm going to reference: the McLaren Senna, which is a car that McLaren currently makes. Well, currently makes is a bit of an oversimplification, but it's one of their signature uh, exotic cars, one of their signature hypercars, and so they have been doing a lot with the Senna name. It's not that they're just bringing this out of nowhere. Like, no, they have had consistent ties with the Senna name over the last few years. Uh, Again, I don't know if you've seen the McLaren Senna. It's a beautiful, stunning car, and I'm all for anything. I'm all for just keeping these legends alive, and they do it in a tasteful way. I'm all for it. We saw a few years ago when they gifted Lewis Hamilton the Senna helmet. I believe that happened in Brazil, and that was a very beautiful thing to witness. You could see the emotion in Hamilton's face. But I'm with you on this. To all the haters out there, be quiet. Please let us have our moment.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's nice to see a livery with color.
yes. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, color. Yes. Also, I'm gonna answer your your question earlier if I've seen the McLaren Senna. No, because I don't have that money. Both of us don't have that kind of money. Let's move on, shall we? Let's not get into our head about cars we can't afford. Let's move on to Charles Leclerc. This is his home race. Obviously, we've seen the memes about, oh, is this Oscar's other home race again, which seems to be the running meme this season, but I'm getting bored of it. Well, don't worry, I love Oscar, but I'm getting bored of the meme. Charles Leclerc. This is his home race. And the question that everyone's going to be asking, as they have been asking since his junior Formula days, is can will he break his curse? Can he break his curse? Uh, if we want to run down of the Charles Leclerc curse, right? I'll start in 20. This, like I said, this goes back to his junior Formula days. Okay, it goes back to his junior Formula days. It started off in F2 2017. Took pole position, led led in the early stages of the lap, right? But bad timing on a pit stop. Bad timing on a pit stop dropped him out of the lead, and then he eventually had to retire. Okay,
Yeah, really important.
no problem. And in 2018, this was his first season of Formula One with Alfa Romeo Sauber. Um, Obviously, in that midfield car, he wasn't going to win anything, right? So, looked like he was going to finish the race. He didn't. Why? He crashed into a Toro Rosso, so he didn't finish. His brakes failed. He crashed. Just didn't finish the race. Didn't see the race till the end, I should say. Right. So, 2019, his first season with Ferrari. Uh, difficult qualifying. Difficult qualifying. Difficult race. Didn't finish it again. He was retired from the race. 2020 was COVID. Obviously, he didn't race there. Yeah. 2021. He 2021 he took pole in qualifying. So he thought, this might actually happen. But he crashed his car in qualifying after he set his pole lap, so no one else could try to best him. And then Ferrari didn't check the car because they were adamant, there's no damage to the car. There was. His gearbox was fucked, so he didn't start the race. Yes, 2022, first year of the new regulations. Thought things might change. Bad. Thought they had it, but just bad strategy, bad pit stops, miscommunication. Did finish the race, but off the podium. He was off the podium. Finished P4. Then, yeah, it's in 2023. I forget what happened. 2023.
2023 is when we can say that he broke the curse. Because he didn't crash out, nothing bad happened. He was able to cross the finish line. 2023 is when we were able to finally say, like, okay, maybe the curse is broken.
Yeah, I guess you could say so. I forget. And then he was taking part in another Grand Prix, the Monaco Historic Grand Prix. This was in 2022, before his pit stop mishap, where he crashed Niki Lauda's 1974 Ferrari F1 car into the wall.
Yeah, that was tragic.
So it seems like the gods are preventing him from winning, or not winning, but at least performing in Monaco, getting on the podium or getting a win. And Charles is only focused on the win in his home race. I guess the real question is, will we see him break that curse this year?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, you know what? We saw Verstappen break the win the first race and come in second curse. So I think Charles can break a curse on his own as well. Um, like I said, I put my money on him or Lando winning. I would love to see Charles Leclerc win this race. I think Ferrari has the pace to do so. I definitely think they can. So you know what? I'll say yes, yes. This year, eh, this year Leclerc breaks the curse.
Okay, interesting. I don't think he will. I don't think he will. I'll eat my words if he does. I'll eat my words if he does. It's not happening, right? But I mean, it is very possible. If we look at if we look at F1 and F2 data, like I said, we were recording this after Friday practice, so you know everything's all settled. So FP1 looks like it seems pretty solid for the Ferraris. FP1, Max Verstappen obviously topped the timing charts. Lando Norris behind P2 Ferrari, and the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc in P3. Oscar Piastri in fourth. It's again. Car Sainz in P5. Wait, sorry. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, I am reading the wrong thing. This is Imola results, not
Yeah,
Monaco
a crazy
practice. My
thing that
apologies.
happened at the Monaco practice. We saw Lewis Hamilton
Oops.
at the top of the practice. That now that was a delight to see. And the reason I say that, the reason I mentioned that is because we haven't seen them be that anywhere near that dominant for 2 seasons. It's been 2 seasons where we just don't see any dominance. But lo and behold, today we finally see a change of pace. We saw your top three for FP2: Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso. That Now that was really nice. But at the top, see, that was FP2. FP1, it was Hamilton, Piastri, and Russell. That was wild. Again,
Mhm.
Mercedes is looking really good. They're looking really, really good. I think there's probably some fire in Hamilton to be like, no, 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 no. I'm the one that gets to keep the Senna Association, not you guys. But it's gonna be interesting. I'm keeping my money on Charles.
Nice. Okay, I like it. I like it. Yeah, just obviously, I mean, you brought it up further down the grid, or further down the results for FP1. Uh, both RBs in the top 10 at 8 and 9. Both Aston Martins in the top 10 at 6 and 7. Both Ferraris as well in the top 10, obviously, at Charles Leclerc in 5th, Carlos Sainz in 10th. The Red Bulls seem to be uh, struggling again. I mean, we saw that last week in Imola, where they just their Friday practices were they were just off the pit, a little bit struggling a little bit, right? Um, I mean, yeah, this Max 8 tenths off, Checo a full second off Lewis in FP1, and then FP2. I mean, half a second. Max was in fourth, half a second off. Checo 8 tenths off, so still getting there, but it's these slow starts to the weekend where we talked about the start of the episode, right? Where it was like, is Red Bull starting to feel vulnerable here? Um, you know, we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see if they can come back. Obviously, Red Bull has a strong team, people back at base, where they can run sim work. They've got sim drivers that they can call up on short notice to, help them fine tune the car setup. Uh, we'll see what happens. They had their sim drivers last week on call. Don't believe they have them this week because of other driver obligations, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know who their sim drivers are. I know Jake Dennis is one of them. He is racing this weekend in Formula E for Andretti in the Shanghai E Prix, and then I don't know who their other sim driver is, like dedicated sim driver. I'm not talking about reserve driver, but that's beyond me. Anyways, right? So just quick FP1 and FP2 recap, right? See just to see what we're looking at. It's looking pretty good. Yeah, the Mercedes seem to be up there. There's some pace. Hamilton looks like he's like locked in. Seems to be always locked in on Monaco. We'll see what happens in qualifying because, as we know, in Monaco, qualifying is the most important part of the race because track is very hard to overtake. Um, for the most, it seems for the most part that wherever you qualify is where you will finish, barring any sort of disruption like a safety car, red flag. So that out the way, I guess I'll ask you who will be on pole tomorrow.
Who will be on pole tomorrow? Ooh. Mm. Oscar. That's my guess.
O-
Oscar. And you know what? And I'll
O-
defend it.
Oscar,
Oscar
wow.
Oscar could have been on
Hey.
pole at Imola. Had it not been for that penalty, he could have been on pole. He was doing really good. We've seen Oscar. He wasn't at the top of FP2, but he was second place in FP1. And this guy, I don't look, and I'm not even, I don't like Oscar. Listeners, I want you guys to know something. If Oscar has a hater, is this boy right here. If he has no haters, I've died. So this doesn't come from someone who is just slurping on the Oscar juice. I'm not doing that. I am not a huge fan. But you know what? I recognize his talent. I recognize his drive. I recognize his humbleness a little. I think he's a pretty humble guy. Yeah, humble esque, whatever. I don't like him. The point is, I think he has the potential to come in pole tomorrow. Who do you think is taking it?
I'm gonna go with such a basic answer here, right? Max Verstappen.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, if oh, I'm sorry, it's just I mean, you can't really discount Max out of a fucking fight for pole, isn't he? Like, he's gonna find those critical tenths of a second somewhere. I mean, we saw that last year, right, where we thought Charles had pole, and then just out of nowhere, 2 tenths out of nowhere to get pole. So I mean, I see that very well happening, and despite the struggles, we'll see. We'll see what happens tomorrow. This is Saturday at Monaco is obviously the most exciting uh, in terms of race action because Sunday is very much a procession with how tight the track is and how big these cars are. Very difficult to overtake. Uh, we'll see though. It will be exciting tomorrow. Speaking of things that are exciting, silly season. It's starting to spice thing. It's things starting to spice up a little bit. Uh, just gonna get this out the way, just so we don't spend too much time on it. We're still waiting on Carlos Sainz and we're still waiting on Carlos Sainz to decide where he wants to go. It seems like he's playing his cards very close to his chest, and really sitting down and um, and trying to get all his options at play here. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, Adrian Newey, um, still like he's undecided, but with this in this ground effect era, uh, he's he's going to be a critical piece given that he has won. He has a good fundamental understanding of ground effect um, as a concept and how he can apply that to Formula One cars. So we'll see. We'll see where he goes if he even decides to stay in Formula One. Just get that out the way because there is some more spicy stuff happening in the. Because I don't say spicy stuff, but this more interesting stuff I'd like to talk about. Last week, it was rumored that uh, rumors came out that Valtteri Bottas could possibly be returning to Williams for 2025 and beyond, in place of Logan Sargent. Now, this rumor kicked off from a started from him being pictured walking out of the Williams motorhome at Imola last week. Now, this is very doable. As it stands right now, he's at Audi, or he's at Sauber, and as it stands, the Sauber Audi have started to use Nico Hulkenberg services, so it's fair, and it seems they want Carlos Sainz in that second seat, so it's very plausible that one or both of those drivers currently at Sauber are not going to have a seat for next year. So Bottas is going to explore his options, and Williams making a return to where he started his career could very much be fitting for him with the resurgence that Williams is going through. James Vowles at the helm. Alex Albon having recently signed a multi-year deal as well, having another experienced driver like Valtteri could be a perfect addition to that team to seal it off as Williams continues and takes that next step in their, I guess, resurgence in their rise back up to the top.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I I agree with that move. I think that could be a good thing. I agree with it. I Here's the thing. He's a driver with a lot of experience. Williams needs someone with his class, and I can look. I feel for Logan Sargent, And unfortunately, this is sometimes what happens. I don't think he'd be left out of Formula One. I think he'd find a seat somewhere. Um, I, but this makes sense for both us. Honestly, it's like it's like when you can tell a player is like slowly getting phased out, but they're too good to leave entirely. That's what happening with him. And so like he'd go to Williams after Williams eventually retire and leave. It makes sense. And honestly, from a career standpoint, he's doing good. And Williams is on the up right now. So if anything, it's an improvement from Stake.
Definitely, definitely. Bottas seems to still have that drive in him, right? Um, seems to have that competitive drive in him. So I think, like I said, pairing him alongside Albon is very doable. And it seems that this isn't. I want to say this is like speculation because it does seem like Val's is actively considering this, um, not directly naming him. He said in an interview at Imola last week, quote, I'm looking, and at the moment, it's about 3 options for 2025, 26. It's as simple as that. When we're in a position where I can talk about it openly, which won't be long, we will do. Um, so, they are weighing up their options. Obviously, they still have Logan Sargent. Fowles is backing Logan and the Williams Academy as a whole. With Logan in that seat, that any driver that's promoted up from a junior academy with the team principals backing, like if a driver is actively saying, "Oh yeah, we back this driver," we're and they're part of like a junior academy, they're actively saying, "Oh yeah, we're backing the drivers as part of our junior academy." It's worth the development's working, we're giving them a chance, but it seems like if they're weighing up their options, you know, doesn't seem like Logan's doing enough to keep his seat right now. And unless he does, something does change. I don't think it's going to happen. Right? Logan loses his seat, and that sucks. I really love Logan, but Formula One's a cutthroat sport. That's just gonna. It does seem he is going to be going the way of going making way for someone in that Williams seat. To who? Who knows?
It's a brutal sport. It's a brutal way things work. But at the end of the day, there's 20 seats, and when they have new players coming in, new drivers coming in, which they do over these next 2 seasons, there's going to be a lot of new drivers coming in. It's it's uh it's go big or go home type thing, you know. And
Yes.
unfortunately, it's been a tough 2 seasons to look for Logan. Uh, does he have time to fix it? Yeah, he still has time, but it's I don't I don't think he'll be phased out of F1, but there's not a lot of seats available.
No, there isn't. Um, he's got to make way.
But
He's got to make way for himself.
speaking of new drivers, tell me about what's going on with this Antonelli stuff.
Ah, yes. So, as we all know, everyone's hyped up. Mercedes and Toto Wolff have hyped up Kimi Antonelli as its next Max Verstappen, this next once in a generational talent that is going to come in and just wipe the floor with everyone. Max Verstappen did, or I should say wipe the floor, but demonstrate the same just skill level that Max had coming into Formula One, and um, Mercedes have openly come out and said that might have overhyped him up a little bit. Um, so just to draw some comparison, so Andre Kim Antonelli he's been with the Mercedes Junior Driver Program since he was in karting. He's wiped the floor in the karting championships and various Formula 4 championships. And Mercedes have decided to skip Formula 3 with him and put him right into Formula 2 at one of the best teams in Formula 2, Prema Racing. He has not gone off to a strong start in Formula 2, but then again, so is his teammate Oliver Bearman, who, Ferrari driver, a kid junior driver, who has already shown himself as worthy of a Formula 1 seat with his performance in Jeddah for the now appendixless Carlos Sainz, right? So he's got numbers, they've got performance. Just Prema just doing dog in F2 this year for some reason, new car or whatever. But you skip, we'll keep that aside. It seems like Mercedes seem to have openly admitted that they've overhyped him up, and with that overhype comes these sensationalized media reports, putting intense pressure on this youngster who's not even 18 yet, by the way. So he wouldn't be eligible to get into Formula One yet if they wanted to hypothetically, or there was a rumor going around that he'd take Logan Sargent mid-season. Obviously that hasn't happened because he's not 18 yet. He doesn't have a very good driver's license. He has enough super license points, but whatever, right? I'm just gonna shut up. I'll say what Toto Wolff has said about this whole situation. We are hyping that young man up for a long time now, and he will be a great driver one day in Formula One. But he's 17. 14 months ago, he drove an F4 car, and there is so much expectation in Italy. We are a little bit guilty also of talking about him at that stage. We should let him do his F2 thing and deliver results, and not be too carried away with what could be or should be. He's going to be in Formula one day, but let's not rush it. This was the same. By the way, this is the Toto Wolff who, a couple months ago, said, he wants Kimi Antonelli to be in that seat, in that over Mercedes seat, alongside George Russell. If you've been living under a rock, Lewis Hamilton's on his way out to Ferrari, open seat at Mercedes, which everyone wants. Toto wants Kimi Antonelli in. Lewis Hamilton said if he was Toto Wolff or a team principal, he'd put Kimi Antonelli in, right? But and that creates all this centralized media and reports putting pressure on him, and but we don't know. Now they're saying, let's take a step back. Let's let him do his thing in Formula 2 before we jump to conclusions. But you guys have already hyped him up. You guys have said he's gonna be in that seat. Now you're saying, let's let him take his time, do his thing. Like, what is it? What is it, Toto? Like, you gonna let him do his thing? You're gonna push him up even though he's not ready. Decide. I don't know. There's so much I can yap about. Just.
Well, we are on Formula Yap, so this is the place to do it.
Thank you for reminding me for me. Yeah, like it's very difficult. Like they can't say like I feel weird that Mercedes are going around hyping up this kid. Not to say he's a terrible, right? This guy can race good. He's running private testing and old machinery with them, so they've got more data than we do. It's just so they probably know more. They definitely know more than two randos yapping on the internet, I guess. But if we just look at his performance in Formula 2 right now, he's really not. He's not there. He's sixth in Formula 2 right now. 36 points. With 36 points, he is. Let me do the math. He's 32 points right now behind the leader, Zane Maloney, and his teammate at Prema, Oliver Bearman, is sitting 20th in F2 standings. But I mean, he got pole in Jeddah, but then he couldn't race from pole because he had to step in for Carlos Sainz in Formula 1 and got 6 points. So Bro has as many points. Oliver Bearman has as many points in Formula 1 for Ferrari as he does right now in Formula 2. Which, yeah, I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, Bro could score points in Formula 1 holding up against some of the world's best drivers. I mean, that should be proof enough, right? That he's more that that these some of these junior drivers are fit and ready to get into Formula 1. Antonelli could probably be the case because he start after a slow start to the season in Formula 2. He seems to be picking it up. He scored points, starting to score points in the feature race. He scored 12 points out at Imola in the feature race, and then 12 points at the feature race before that in Melbourne. So it seems like he's starting to find his groove in Formula 2. But is he there yet? Don't know. If people, these guys saying that he's the next um, uh, Max Verstappen. Mind you, Max Verstappen went from Formula 3 to Formula 1 with Toro Rosso. Uh, and Kimi Antonelli went from Formula 4 to Formula 2. So he's at Formula 3. And for Formula 2, he's got to go to Formula 1. So it's a little bit of a different predicament here. See what happens. I don't know. I don't know about this. Like, it's weird. Mercedes have said they felt guilty about they're guilty of overhyping Antonelli. It's not like you can just take back the hype. You guys have already hyped him up. You guys just say, "Oh, let's back off of him now. Like, let's let him do his thing." Like, yeah, of course we're gonna do his thing, but now we're gonna hold him up to a high bar because you openly said, like, yeah, he's gonna be here. This is where we see him. He's this generational talent. Blah blah blah. You did this to yourselves. Like, if he can't hold his own, this is it's your doing. You put the pressure on him. He crumbled. Yeah. Tough shit. Suppose. So. I just wow, that was well
That
more
was
than
cool.
that was proper yap. That was
That
proper yap.
was a perfect expose on what's going on with Antonelli. And the only thing I could add is that before there was Antonelli, there was this scrawny little Brit with the face of Woody called George Russell. And Toto, you can go and rewatch those episodes on Drive to Survive. Toto knew George Russell's potential, but guess what? George Russell still had to spend 2 years in a Williams,
Three,
and not
three,
the
three.
Williams we know today. The Williams that barely had enough money to buy scotch tape to fix their car. That Williams. So I know that Toto's good at scouting talent. He found it. I know people think that they're gonna just push them into the Mercedes car. They might, but I mean, it's tough. Formula One is tough, and that kid is a young kid. Verstappen is a once in a lifetime type of a thing, And can they do it again? They can, but it just that's anyhow. I
Any
digress.
no, yeah. I mean, yeah. This Mercedes crap is tough, but I think I've had my yapping session. I'm gonna let you yap because you're a big Red Bull fan. You're a Checo fan, Mexican heritage and all. So I want your thoughts about the Checo negotiations and this ongoing storyline, even though it's not really a storyline anymore, about who gets that second Red Bull seat. Will it be Sergio Perez or will it be Daniel Ricciardo? Or is it going to be someone else? Like, you want Checo on that Red Bull seat, but
Yes, yes, I do want Mr. Checo. I want him in that seat. Here's what I know so far. So 2 years ago, Checo Perez wins the Grand Prix of Monaco, and it's revealed that he had just before winning the race had signed a 2-year extension. We see him jokingly tell Horner as they're walking up to the steps to receive their trophies. The post, Jesus, the ceremony. You know what I'm talking about. You can see him joke with Horner, saying, "Hi, I guess I signed too early." To which Horner replies, "Nah, nah, nah. You did the right thing." What I understand and what I've heard through the grapevine is that Checo has received a 1 year deal from Red Bull, a 1 year deal. To which Checo says, "No, I'd like another 2 years, please." Which Red Bull seems to be hesitant on. I can see why. You keep someone on for 2025, and at 2026, when you have the regulation changes, you switch it up with your new talent. And I'm sure Red Bull has some people in the works that they're going to try to develop right now. Uh, so is possible. Checo is possible to extend by 1 more year. I think that's could be a win-win for both of them. Um, but the alternative, they have Daniel Ricciardo, who just wants that Red Bull seat. I'll tell you what, though, from what I've seen the past two, three races, Daniel Ricciardo is not that strong. He's no longer the honey badger of Australia. He's more like the honey badger's dead cousin. He's like roadkill from Australia. That's harsh.
Oh,
I
wow.
know.
Wow.
I
Wow.
know.
Danny Rick is
I
roadkill. Danny
know.
Rick is roadkill. Are you saying he's washed? Oscar Piastri's the Aussie on the block?
Australia. Look, all I'm gonna say is Australia has a new face, and he doesn't have a big nose, and he's a little pasty, and he's white, and his name is Oscar.
That's
Here's what I'm trying to get at. We
actually
have
annoying.
Red Bull has an option for look. Yuki Tsunoda has really been beating Daniel Ricciardo, and they're not offering Yuki a seat at Red Bull. They're not offering him to move up to the first tier team. They're not letting him move to Formula A. So why would Daniel Ricciardo, who has been consistently off pace, look? It's been a tough year. He spent that year as a reserve driver, which to me was a mistake. He should have gone to Haas. I digress. He hasn't been able to just get in tune with the car the same way that this isn't like when he moved to Renault where people were like, huh, maybe he did do the right move. Like, no, like this has not been the right move. And it's not that you can't blame it all on the car because Yuki has been doing really good. Again, the year's not over. I don't know what stats Red Bull has in front of them. I know that when Daniel Ricciardo tested earlier in the year and he tested in a Red Bull, he did really, really good. But it's just not he hasn't been able to keep that up.
Yeah.
Is there a third contender? Maybe someone that we don't know about? I don't think so. There is light rumors. Again, I don't think since they're offering the contract to Checo, I don't think that this is possible. But around 2016, not 2016, around what was it, 28? When was it? Let me see. Around 2014, we have this young driver, the 16-year-old, joining F1 for the first time ever. He goes by the name of Max Verstappen. I know you guys know who I'm talking about, but not a lot of people know that his partner, who was also in the Red Bull Academy, was driving his first Formula race that day. Somebody who goes by the name of Carlos Sainz Jr. You heard of him? He wears red now, and he's a very skilled driver who went and grew up in the Red Bull Academy. He left because he knew that Max Verstappen was going to be the future of Red Bull, and he had he made great career choices. He went to Renault, and then when Daniel Ricciardo went to Renault, he went to McLaren, and then when Daniel Ricciardo went to McLaren, he went to Ferrari. So, I mean, can we say that Carlos Sainz owes his career to Daniel Ricciardo's bad choices? Possibly, because look, the only person that has benefited from Danny Rick's bad choices has been Carlos Sainz. Did I mention he drives for Ferrari? Yeah. He went from being a meme years ago when they asked, "What car do you drive?" And he had to, with a little bit of shame, reply, "I drive a Volkswagen Golf," to say, "I drive whatever Ferrari I freaking want to." And that's a pretty crazy upgrade. You know what I mean? I bet you Red Bull and Horner specifically is like, let me lock this guy down. He doesn't have a contract. Have you seen the way Science drives? Like, dude, and honestly, look, I'm as straight as an arrow, right? I look, I have you seen that guy's neck? That thing is like thick,
Yep.
bro. Pause. That thing is like 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 Jesus. I'm jealous of his girlfriend. You know what I mean? That's crazy. And we know not only is he a smooth operator in that car, I bet you he's a smooth operator in the nighttime. But let me get back to the topic we're talking about. Who's going to
Wait,
be the second seat for Red Bull?
wait.
Go ahead.
No, that's some hot bars right there. Smooth operator in the sheets. That's crazy.
I think, I think that second seat, if it doesn't go to Checo for one more year, I think they're, I think they're going to convince Checo to do it just
Mm.
because he'll want to stay in Formula One. If he doesn't keep that Red Bull seat, I don't think he's keeping any seat.
Oh,
Uh, I, I, I think that's what's going to happen. But is there another driver they can give it to? Albon was also in the academy. I don't think they're giving it to him. Pierre
no.
Gasly was in the academy. I don't think they're giving it to him. Carlos Sainz would be a great choice. That would be a
Yeah.
2 year contract because it leaves in 2026. So it'd be 2025. It, it could be a 2 year contract, but honestly, I bet you things are going to end up staying the same. I don't know unless you know of a driver who is in the reserves or is available. I don't think I can't see any. Because here's the thing: you got to realize, like, this isn't, and this wouldn't be like going to Williams, going to Haas, Stake. It wouldn't be like going to even Aston Martin where you can say, "Hey guys, like let's work on this car together and let's find something that works for both of us." This is not that. The car you're going into Max Verstappen's car. And for better for worse, that's how things are. And honestly, that's not a bad thing. Max Verstappen, though he has a unique style, like he's the face of the operation. So you have to keep in mind that choosing to go to Red Bull means you're choosing to drive Max's car, which if you don't if you don't if you're new to Formula 1, you're gonna struggle. And even if you're not new to Formula 1, his driving style is very unique and the things he likes in a car are very unique to where it's gonna be really tough for you to adjust if you're used to having your team cater to you. So from that perspective, someone that was inside the Red Bull Academy makes sense because they'll understand, you know what? I know I'm second place here. That's fine. Let me work with what I got. Checo has been doing a great job. Daniel Ricciardo is still a great driver. He's a little bit washed, but he could be a great number two driver. The reason he wasn't earlier, all those years ago in 2018, was because he struggled to accept the reality that he was a number two driver. Were he to come back and say, guys, I'm ready to be your number two, things could be different. But my money's on Checo, or I bet you they're talking to Science.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
and
okay.
yes, sir.
I like it. I like it. I like it. That's the art of Formula Yap right there.
Yes,
Definitely.
sir.
Speaking of Yap, things I'm going to yap about because uh,
Lay it on me.
I'm very interested in this drama. Is the Andretti Cadillac whole spiel? There seem to be more updates with it. Um, if if we haven't heard, Andretti are trying to get onto the Formula One grid as an 11th team for 2025 or 2026, right? The FIA have approved them, but Formula One, the commercial rights holder, have denied them for a bunch of reasons. Most of it's just yap, just like what I'm talking about right now. How we're talking straight yap, and apparently the U.S. Congress is getting involved. But Andretti have not stopped despite F1's denial. They have built a new base up in Silverstone, not just for F1, obviously. This is part of their larger worldwide expansion into motorsport as a whole, given that they are in other motorsport, racing in other motorsports like Formula E, Extreme E, um, and whatnot. Uh, let's see, I said they have a base in Silverstone. They're actively working on a car for 2025 still, despite them not going to be on the grid in 2025. And they have just made a big signing, actually, in the past week. Pat Simmons, who, for those people that came on from Drive to Survive, if you don't know who Pat Simmons is, he is just a old British dude who just so happened to be in Formula One back in the day. He was Formula One's chief technical officer most recently, but he spent his time most notably at Renault in the mid to late 2000s. He is infamously known for Crashgate. Um, I'm not going to get into that, but it was pretty much just like a race fixing incident. And Fernando Alonso won that race, but I'm not going to bore you with the details on that because why not? He's left Formula One as chief technical officer to join Andretti-Cadillac as an executive engineering consultant. Now, this is interesting because Pat Simmons is regarded as quite a smart man around the Formula One paddock. I mean, you've got to be smart and gutsy, by the way, to fix a Formula One race. You know, that takes nerve first and foremost. But you have to think about it as well as like all the pieces have to come together for you to fix a race in such a way that when your cars wins the race. So shady, yes, but that shouldn't discount for the fact that Pat Simmons is one of the smartest and figures in the world of Formula One. The fact that he's left F1 itself, the commercial rights holder of the Formula One World Championship, to join Andretti Cadillac, a team that F1, the commercial rights holder of Formula One, have denied entry into the Formula One FIA Formula One World Championship for 2025 is telling. It's the movement behind getting Andretti on as the 11th team on the Formula One grid is growing. There, at least outside of the paddock, it seems the public at large wants Andretti to be on the grid. More competition is always better, right? But people inside the paddock, particularly the existing teams and Formula One itself, are saying, "Nah, don't want you to be here. I want to close up shop." Pretty sure they don't want to do that. If Congress comes knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, you're acting like a monopoly, you're acting like a mafia," you know, can't have that happening, especially if you're preventing an American team from coming on the grid. I don't know. Doesn't seems a little sus. And F1 can be like, oh no, we're not acting like this at all. It's just we listed our reasons why they can't come in. Congress is like, yeah, we think that's a lot of shit. And Andretti are continuing on with their development of an F1 car, uh, expanding their reach as a motorsport organization, Andretti Global as a whole. GM, General Motors, their technical partner, or I guess their engine supplier, through the Cadillac brand, are still wholeheartedly committed to this Formula One project as a whole. So the backing is there. So, and then obviously, like I said, you have Pat Simmons leaving Formula One itself to join Andretti-Cadillac. Movement is growing, especially with that. Something's got to buckle here soon. We don't know what's going to give. Something has to give soon. In the next couple months, who knows? We'll see what happens. Andretti, the ball is fully in F1's court now, especially with Congress knocking on their door. And Congress wanting the Department of Justice to investigate Formula One and Liberty Media, F1's parent company. Something might happen. You know how much these rich guys don't like it when government starts interfering with things, but I get too political. Anyways, it seems like I said, the ball's in Formula One's F1's hand, and F1's still very much stubborn about it. Mario Andretti, in a Andretti said that to NBC News exclusively a couple weeks back that Greg Maffei, the CEO of Formula One's parent company, Liberty Media, clashed at a private event in Miami 2 weeks ago. And from the reports, it seems that they are going at it. Seems they're very much going at each other's throats. This is what Mario Andretti said as he described it to NBC News. I was asked to go there, there being Congress, Washington, D.C., to discuss this issue with Congress. And just as I was trying to explain that to Stefano, Greg Maffei, Mr. Maffei, broke in the conversation and he said, Mario, or quote, Mario, I want to tell you that I will do everything in my power to see that Michael, Mario Andretti's son, never enters Formula One. So battle lines have been drawn. And the Andrettis don't seem to be taking this personally. Greg Maffei certainly is. If these reports are true, this is a bad look for Liberty Media and for Formula One as a whole. This the like I said at the start of this bit, they don't want to give off mafia vibe. Like the Congress, like you're acting like a mafia, and F1's like, no, oh, we're not. Well, this is kind of proof that the F1's acting like a mafia. Is it? They want to keep close shop. They don't want other people in. It's a bad look. It's a bad look for Formula One if this drags on. And I don't know. Very weird. Very weird that Formula One, Liberty Media is very hands-on with Formula One, despite being very hands-off with their other holdings, particularly the Atlanta Braves. Liberty Media also owns Major League Baseball's Atlanta Braves, which are a baseball team in the States. They are very hands-off with them. It seems that they are very hands-off with F1 because it's their cash cow right now. It's very much an international moneymaker for them, whereas baseball is a stateside thing, right? So it seems they want to Liberty want to control this as much as they can, try to milk it for all the money they can, whether it's closing up shop so they don't let other teams in, or extorting the shit out of Andretti-Cadillac to get them to pay an exorbitant amount of, anti-dilution fee, some sort of fee to get them in, cover them and their team's own asses. Who knows? We'll see. Me personally, I don't like what F1 is doing. The FIA have said, yeah, these guys are good enough to go. Why aren't you letting him in? Oh, we have reasons. I've read their reasons. You can Google it. They're a bunch of bullshit. Andretti's gonna continue. Andretti's gonna continue on. F1's gonna force their bluff. They have to call F1's bluff eventually. If F1 if F1 says, "Oh, we're not bluffing, we actually mean it," well, knock knock, Congress is here. No, when you get the might of the United States Congress, or the United States government, you generally, right, if the United States government is knocking on your door and saying, "Hey, we don't like what you're doing," it's when you should take a step back. You're like, "Oh, we don't want any trouble." You know, hands in the air. Fine, we'll do what you say, U.S. government.
Yeah, and,
Nope.
and and just to add to any listeners out there who may be like, does the US really have that much power? The thing is, Liberty Media is an American company with a lot of business in the United States. So it is in the United States' best interest to have American presence in the sport, but also they could be, and because of that, they can be a real pain in the butt to Liberty Media on their other endeavors simply because they're still technically an American company.
Yep. Oof. I ran out of fucking breath talking about this, but yeah, it's F1, the commercial rights holders of Formula One, which are Formula One and Liberty Media, they're slowly but surely getting forced into a corner here, and Andretti are committed. The FAA are committed to them. They've already given the green light, and if they don't get their way, if Andretti don't get their way, the Congress and the Department of Justice, the U.S. government, Uncle Sam's right there, just ready to just pounce. Cell phone's like, you're not gonna call on Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam's just like right there in the corner, just like, yeah, we're here. Don't you worry, we're right here. Don't fuck this up. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with this as this drama plays out in the coming months. Just like I will let this podcast play out to the end. That is it, everyone. If you have any last thoughts, Kevin, just about everything you said about the Andretti this debacle, or we talked about, last thoughts, really.
No. Bring my boy Mario. Let him drive. Let his boys drive. That's about it.
True, so true. Don't. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, yeah. Like, I don't know why you telling, bro. I don't know why Greg Maffei's telling Mario, I'm gonna do everything you can to not yet you let your son into Formula One. I was like, what the hell? It's like, what did he do to you? What did he do to you? Like, you mean to tell me things would be different if Mario Andretti was the head of Andretti Global? Like, you think would that make a difference? Oh, it's like, oh, Mario, yeah, you're a respectable guy. Sure, I'll let you. Mario's 70 something, bro. Doesn't have the time to be leading a worldwide motorsport organization. Let bro live life. He has a Formula One World Championship on as well. Let bro live life. Let bro live life. Right. Anyways, respect to Mario Andretti for standing up for his son. Michael like that, and Michael and the Andretti family as a whole for pushing forward with this project and forcing F1 and Liberty Media into a corner. Honestly, probably might be the most exciting thing that happens all season. If we return back to Max Verstappen dominance, that is, at Monaco and in future races, which I don't see that happening because McLaren are number 2. They're ready to fight. I think that's it. I've gotten all the yap out. Have you gotten all the yap out?
I've got all the yap out of me. I think we completed this
Yeah, there we go.
Formula
Everybody
Yap Grand Prix.
There we go. Well, yeah, there we go. Well, thank you everyone for listening to the first ever Formula Yap episode. Very much appreciate it. We'll be back. Let me actually check the Formula One schedule. We'll probably see Canada next week. Okay, so we'll be back in 2 weeks for to recap Monaco and preview the Formula One AWS Grand Prix du Canada. Wow, AWS. That's wonderful. At least you know
Amazon
what
is everything.
Amazon Web Services. You know what? At least this is a simple. It has it. I wish they didn't have sponsors in it like Monaco, the Formula One Grand Prix de Monaco. But at least it's not like Imola or as we fully say it, The Formula One MSC Cruises Gran Premio del Made in Italy dell'Emilia Romagna 2024. Or, as everyone likes to call it, Emilia Romagna or Imola, because fuck it. Shorter is better. Not what my girl says. Anyways, thank you everyone for
Hey,
coming.
yo.
Thank you for coming, listening, everyone. We'll be back in about 2 weeks' time to recap Monaco and preview Canada.
See y'all in 2 weeks.
We'll yap again. Bye.